Hello, and welcome to Requirements 101, Module 2, the third in the series. That's right, some genius decided to call the first module Module 0, and in doing so likely confused half of you watching this. In any case, it is important that you have watched Module 1 before passing this point. So if you have not done so already, please stop here and go back to Module 1. It's probably safe to assume that most of you just ignored that instruction, so here is a quick recap of Module 1. Houston, we have a problem. We looked at both an unacceptable and a couple of acceptable definitions for the term requirement. We covered a basic definition that you could use at the bar or at the gym, as well as IEEE's version that we would advise against using at the bar or the gym. Trust us on this. We also proposed to you that good requirements writing is essentially a communication skill, not exactly a human specialty, especially in the written form. So it comes as no surprise that 37% of organizations stated that unclear requirements were the primary reason for project failure. In this module, we get stuck into our very first rule, and arguably the most important paradigm shift that we in the oil and gas industry need to make, where it concerns the requirements. We need to start seeing each individual requirement as an individual building block. That is exactly the inspiration for the Requirements 101 logo. Individual, self-contained blocks that, when combined and organized with other individual blocks, make the engineering magic happen. As we will start to discover in upcoming modules, the effectiveness of several processes in engineering depend on the ability to identify and work with singular statements. Let's take a look at an example. How many requirements do you see expressed in this statement? There are 3 separate requirements in this statement, all of poor quality. One is a design requirement, the other deals not with design but execution scope, and the final requirement actually concerns testing. One sentence, but 3 different responsible parties and covering multiple design and engineering phases. This is a failed requirement. It is really important that each requirement statement is limited to one quality, one characteristic, one functionality, or one constraint at a time. Just one. If you find yourself writing whole paragraphs using the word "and" multiple times to combine multiple thoughts together in one sentence, or worse still, you mix up your shalls and your shoulds in one statement or one paragraph, then you are breaking an important requirement writing rule, the rule of one requirement at a time. Let's take a look at another example. How many requirements do you see in this statement? There are 3 requirements in this one sentence, all of which need major improvement. But the important thing to focus on at this stage is the number of requirements in the statement. There is also a simple matter of clarity and efficiency. We will now play a game of Spot the Requirements. The following is a segment from a BFD. How many requirements can you see? Did you need more time? Well, have a go at this one. How many requirements do you see? Let's take a little longer. This is 1/4 of one page of a standard that is over 100 pages long. Maybe it would help if we chunked the paragraph into smaller pieces. That's a bit easier to read. So it looks like 6 requirements, each of which we can tick off as we comply or consider their implications. There are a few other issues with this text that we will talk about in later modules. Now let's try one more. How many requirements do you see this time? Easy, right? 4 requirements, 1 requirement per clause, and each one individually numbered. Why make life difficult when there are easier and more efficient ways of working? On our last project, we received clarifications from a supplier with references to a requirement in Section 2.2, Paragraph 3, second half of the 4th sentence, and all this in the 21st century on a multi-billion-dollar project. Our generation has witnessed a communications revolution, and yet requirements in our BFDs and project specs would be more at home in a textbook or a novel by Charles Dickens from the 1840s. Now, we certainly do have great expectations for the future and the energy transition ahead of us, but on this point, our industry is definitely in hard times. So we must start authoring individually numbered requirements, not only for ease of reference and identification, but also to manage each individual requirement over its entire life cycle. We'll hopefully cover the life cycle of a requirement in a future module. Let's briefly return to one of the requirements we just looked at. Strictly speaking, we actually have 2 requirements here: self-draining and no pockets, and one could argue that the requirements should be split up, and that would be fair. However, we can also use our engineering judgment and see that self-draining and no pockets are 2 requirements that would be executed by the same engineer, that would be located on the same drawing, and would be verified by the same person at the very same time. In cases like these, it is acceptable to use the word "and" to combine these requirements into one statement. It is still short and easy to understand. However, you do need to watch out when wrongly using "and" to combine wildly different needs and requirements. Use your engineering judgment and, if in doubt, split them out. The key takeaway from this module: individual requirements, one need or constraint at a time, each requirement individually numbered, no long paragraphs containing multiple requirements or a mix of requirements and recommendations. From now on, when you think requirements or are about to write a requirement, we want you to recall the Requirements 101 icon. We will change the world together, but one requirement at a time.